Hello everyone, Yubel Master, aka 38 the Master 1 here, and I have an exciting video for you Yubel fans today, because we're going to be discussing the possibility of getting more support for Yubel than just the 7 cards we have so far. Before we get into it, I'd like to remind you all to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. We cover everything Yubel and Yu-Gi-Oh related here, so if you call yourself a Yubel fan, then tap that notification bell too, and hey, if you know someone who loves Yubel just as much as I do, then tell them about the channel. Okay, so as I said in my first impressions of the Phantom Nightmare reveal, this whole pack is definitely a reference to the Phantom Darkness. So when looking at possible future or more support for the Yubel deck, I think a good start will be looking at the cards that were released in Phantom Darkness. So this pack was released in 2008 when I was a young teenager, so I was still in the playground meta, and all I remember is just seeing these packs in stores. We can have a quick glance at the cards here. This is, as you can see, where they released Yubel for the first time. You can see the 3 forms here, but they also released a couple of other cards that Yubel used in the anime, such as Rainbow Dark Dragon, Samsara Lotus, and Regenerating Rose. But I'll be saving those cards, especially the Regenerating Rose, and my theories on them for the end of the video, so do stick around for that. But for now, I definitely wanted to cover these cards here: Dark Armed Dragon, Dark Crater, Dark Horus, and Dark Nephestis. This set saw the release and pretty much the debut of a lot of Dark Counterpart cards of iconic cards in the TCG. And some of these cards, especially Dark Armed Dragon, kind of define the meta for several formats to come after this release. Now, although more Armed Dragon / Ojama support might be a possibility, I don't think that we'll be getting them in this set. I think we'll be getting more cards that might be a dark counterpart to other famous cards that we know very well nowadays. So let's just quickly scroll down and see some of the spell cards. We can see that Spell Chronicle was also released in this set. This is actually where Super Polymerization debuted, Rainbow Neos as well, and Rainbow Veil. Beginning of the End, Dark Eruption, Fires of Doomsday. We can see there's a lot of support for the dark attribute. We can see a couple more things down here. Allure of Darkness, Dark Lord Zerato, even Lone Fire Blossom, believe it or not. This is actually a GX card, not a 5Ds card, so the more you know. And here are some of the Ghost Rares and Ultimate Rares. So yeah, this was a really good set back in the day. But as for Dark Counterpart cards, these could be anything. Like, we could get Dark Counterparts for random 4 stars, like Spirit Ryu, Marauding Captain. Any normal monster could be retrained into a Dark Counterpart, because we did get Dark Grepher in Phantom Darkness. So Thunder, Nyan Nyan. Maybe this is just the reverse or something, so if there is a non-dark monster on the field, then it gets destroyed or something, and it's just a really good 4-star. Maybe even a Dark Thunder Dragon. I think that will be really cool. Some kind of discard effect or a banish effect that adds itself or something. We have Slate Warrior, Gemini Elf, Giant Soldier of Stone. I think a Dark Giant Soldier of Stone could look really, really cool. I mean, the possibilities are endless with this. It's not even limited to monsters. We could even get retrains of spells and traps that are the dark version, because we've gotten Dark Mirror Force in the past. Maybe we could get a Dark Monster Reborn or a Dark Pot of Avarice that banishes 5 monsters to draw 2 cards or something like that. Who knows? The possibilities are endless with these dark counterparts, but I think there's a fairly high chance that we could get them in Phantom Nightmare just to relive the Phantom Darkness experience, basically. So another thing that was released in Phantom Darkness was Gigaplant as a Gemini card. So maybe we could be seeing some Gemini support. We know that in the past, the way I like to run my Yubel deck is using Doom Shaman. Doom Shaman has been really good for the Yubel deck for the longest time, and it's only until we've gotten this new support that we can finally cut it from the deck. But Gemini support could be beneficial. Maybe we could get something like a Doom Shaman's Apprentice, just a general retrain of Doom Shaman that isn't a Gemini monster, but maybe instead it's just a 4-star monster that's a lot easier to use, and maybe for the cost of life points it summons fiends or something. I think that could be pretty cool, and it might even be good enough to run in a Yubel deck if it can special summon fiends from the hand or something. It could be an alternate way to special summon Spirit of Yubel if you draw it and don't get your Samsara Lotus. Also, maybe we could see a Dark Gigaplant, maybe a Fiend version of Gigaplant that special summons Earth-type Fiend monsters, or maybe plant-type dark monsters or something like that. I think that would be pretty cool, especially since Yubel's deck is kind of like a Fiend Rose kind of theme going on here, with Nightmare Pain.
Nightmare Pain.
The artwork and the animation in the anime was showing a kind of rose tentacle kind of attack. We could see support from some plants type stuff that might be able to synergize with Yubel. Another possibility I wanted to mention was maybe we could see a Neos Alias version of Yubel, because we have seen a Spirit of Neos version of Yubel with Spirit of Yubel. So maybe if we get like some kind of Yubel alias or something, maybe it's a elemental hero Yubel alias, and maybe in a similar way it's a Gemini monster that when you normal summon it, its name is treated as Yubel, because that could be pretty useful if you're running a Neos Kluger deck and could actually make the Neos Kluger deck actually playable, which personally I don't think it will be with the new cards coming out. So yeah, there are some Gemini cards which we could be getting. There were some cards released in Phantom Darkness that synergized with Yubel at the time, such as the Calculator, Fires of Doomsday, these Dumping Knights we see here, such as Armageddon Knight and Dark Grapher. Now personally, I don't think we'll be getting retrains of the Dumping Knights since they are currently limited, and because tier limits are a thing, so there's not really a way of retraining these without making it either really, really good or really, really bad. However, I do have an idea for a new retrain of the Calculator. The Calculator has been retrained before in the Calibrator, but the Calibrator kind of sucks. So maybe we can have a 4-star that gains 1,000 attack for every level 10 monster on the field or in the graveyard, because the Calculator right now can probably reach attacks of over 6,000 with just 2 Yubel cards. So I think it wouldn't be much of a stretch to add a card that synergizes with level 10 cards and gains attack for them in the grave as well, because that can reach 6,000 as well, but it's probably even harder to reach 6,000. So I think that's pretty balanced. And maybe you could call it something like the counter or something, and it just has like a dial on its face that has 10, 10, 10 or something, and it synergizes with level 10s, because we have been seeing a lot of support for level 10 stuff recently, especially in Duelist Nexus with the trade-in for level 10s, as well as this zombie tower that can be special summoned if you control a level 10 monster. So maybe they'll continue the trend and we'll be seeing more in Phantom Nightmare, especially since this is where Yubel cards are coming in. So generic support for level 10s could be very beneficial. So another card that was printed in Phantom Darkness and was even printed as a ghost rare as well was Rainbow Neos. We also got Rainbow Veil as well as Rainbow Dark Dragon in this set as cards that reference the anime at the time. Rainbow Veil and Rainbow Neos were both cards that Jaden used against Yubel in the anime. While I don't think we're going to get a retrain of those specifically, I think that since Rainbow Dark Dragon was one of the cards that was printed in Phantom Darkness, I think we could get something like a Rainbow Dark Neos maybe. Even though it never existed in the anime or anything, we could make it a more generic Neos fusion that could just be with Neos plus any Dark Dragon monster. It could end up being a nice support for the Neos deck, since they already run the fusion Armed Neos, which is very good in that deck. A card like Rainbow Dark Neos might make them use Dark Armed Dragon in the deck, instead of using the Armed Dragon level 10, because Dark Armed Dragon is a Dark and a Dragon, so it could summon this hypothetical Rainbow Dark Neos. I'm not sure what the effect could be, but hey, if you're a Neos fan, then maybe you're looking for something like this in your deck. But I do also want to talk about Rainbow Dark Dragon being in Phantom Darkness. This could mean that we might be getting some support for the Advanced Dark Crystal Beast deck. I know there are a lot of Crystal Beast fans out there, and not all of them prefer to run the Advanced Dark version of the deck, but we haven't seen support for the Advanced Dark in a while, so maybe this is the set that we're getting it, especially since Yubel was the character that actually played the deck in the anime. If you're a Crystal Beast fan and this is what you've been looking for, then fingers crossed for you guys. But for you Yubel fans out there, we may even see some synergy with Yubel, since this is a deck that Yubel used, so maybe they might incorporate a little bit of synergy, who knows. So the next card I want to talk about is Super Polymerization. This was released in Phantom Darkness, and this is a card that has slowly gotten better over the days. Now I know that we basically got a retrain of this card in the form of Eternal Favorite. However, if we cast our minds back to the ending of Season 3 of GX, Yubel's plan was to use Super Poly to fuse the 12 dimensions and be with Jaden forever. Yubel used Chain Material to use 12 monsters from their deck with levels from 1 through 12 to summon some kind of super fusion god. In the anime, this never actually went through. Yubel did activate the 2 cards, but then Jaden used Spiritual Fusion to change the fusion targets to both him and Yubel's souls, fusing them together instead. So I brought up a list of all the monsters that Yubel used to try and summon this super fusion god. Most of them are kinda generic and are obviously just there to fill the level requirements such as Gate Guardian and Infernal Flame Emperor. So we aren't going to get retrains of those most likely, and I don't even think we're going to get another Lava Golem. But what I do think is a possibility for a retrain is the Chain Material card, and also we might actually get the Super Fusion God as an actual card. Who knows? The Chain Material retrain could be a Yubel version, just how like we got with Mature Chronicle for the retrain for Spell Chronicle. That only works with the Yubel archetype this time and isn't generic anymore. And maybe it like fusion summons using your graveyard, requiring you to set up your grave with monsters from levels 1 through 12, and it summons something very specific, which could be this fusion god thing that we're talking about. You can use Yubel and the 3 forms, which are level 10, 11, and 12, for the materials, which for some reason Yubel never actually used in the anime apart from the level 12 Ultimate Nightmare. And then they could just make the Super Fusion God a really strong card. Maybe just like when this card is summoned, you win the duel, or it gains infinite attack or something ridiculous. Because that is what the anime version was supposed to be. The thing is, it just never got summoned. Making the Super Fusion God does have the anime card problem of it's either going to be really, really good or really bad because they have to nerf it. So making it is really difficult, especially since we don't know anything about the Super Fusion God other than the materials required to summon it, and that it probably has an effect that wins the duel when summoned, like Exodia. But here's my idea of how they could actually make it. They could change the materials required to be 12 monsters on the field. Since this is now possible with the extra deck monster zone, it would also have to require the spell Super Poly to be just like the anime, and it has to have some kind of restrictions, like it cannot be summoned any other way, and the effect to win the duel only works when you use Super Poly or something like that. Has to probably have a lot of restrictions if it's just going to win the duel. But the requirements for 12 monsters on the field makes it so that you have to fill your board with 6 monsters after the turn that your opponent has done exactly the same, which nowadays in modern Yu-Gi-Oh! Is almost impossible to do, because if your opponent has a board full of 6 monsters, 1 or 2 of those monsters probably have some kind of interruption or negates. So setting up a board of 6 monsters yourself is pretty difficult, especially when you can't use tokens and just fill your opponent's board with tokens. But I think this is difficult enough to justify a complete win condition when summoned, and I think it's somewhat reminiscent of how it was used in the anime. Because I feel like using levels 1 through 12 to fusion summon it is a little too easy. Because I feel like in modern Yu-Gi-Oh! There's probably a lot of ways you could just cheat it out and use fusion materials from the deck. Especially since Chain Material is actually a card that exists in the TCG that does exactly that. So if you release the Super Fusion God as it is now, it would actually be surprisingly easy to summon. Because all you need is just Chain Material, which you could search with Triple Tactics Thrust, and a Super Poly. Then you just set both of them and then activate them on your opponent's turn, and then if the Super Fusion God has a you win the duel condition, then it's just way too easy to get it out. Especially if you've just built your deck to include levels 1 through 12 and make it pretty consistent. It's just too strong even for modern Yu-Gi-Oh! Standards. So I think that my restriction of using any 12 monsters on the field except tokens is hard enough to make this an actual card, while being reminiscent of the anime without breaking the game. So anyway, moving on to Yubel's more iconic cards, and I have saved the best till last, so let's talk about it. And if you're still watching by now, I do appreciate you all. If you're enjoying the video so far, don't forget to leave a like. And if you haven't subscribed yet, what are you doing? It's completely free and it takes a couple of seconds, so do it now before I get into the juicy bits. So there's still quite a few of Yubel's cards that we haven't seen retrains of yet. For some of them, we haven't even seen them being released in the TCG. First, we have Regenerating Rose and Sinister Seeds. Personally, I'm not sure what they could do with Sinister Seeds to make it good, because it was a post-destruction battle trap, which doesn't really fit into the modern Yu-Gi-Oh! Meta nowadays. But with Regenerating Rose, there's definitely lots of potential. The old card was a 7-star with 0 attack and 1500 defense that says, when it's destroyed by battle and sent to the graveyard, special summon 2 tokens with 1200 attack and defense. But in the anime, it actually didn't completely suck because it had another effect that when it battles a monster, it copies that monster's attack. So you can actually crash into anything, which is not bad for a 7-star at the time. And I have no idea why they nerfed it. Maybe they were scared that it would be cheated out by Lone Fire Blossom, since Lone Fire Blossom was printed in the same set. But that's more of a Lone Fire Blossom problem, not a Regenerating Rose problem, because I think a 7-star that can crash into anything isn't too broken, even for the time. Anyway, when remaking this card, they might as well just add back the anime effect, because why not? Then they should add a way to summon it without tributing, because this is modern Yu-Gi-Oh! We're talking about. Such as if you control a Yubel monster, you can special summon it from the hand, just something simple like that. And they should make the token summon effect easier to pull off rather than relying on battles, such as if this card leaves the field, maybe. And also it could add something that actually makes summoning the tokens worthwhile. Maybe adds an effect that the tokens gain the following effect when they are summoned. If this token is tributed, then you gain 1,200 life points, which is the attack and defense of the tokens. I think that would make the card at least worthy of adding in the deck without making it too broken, because it basically gives Yubel tribute fodder other than the new Samsara Lotus, so you can easier use the Samsara Lotus to negate effects on your opponent's turn. Next up, we have Grave Squirmer and Mad Reloader, which are both level 1 fiend monsters with 0 attack and defense, so there's lots of potential for the Yubel archetype here. Both of them trigger their effects when they're destroyed. Mad Reloader discards 2 cards, then draws 2, and Grave Squirmer pops a card. So a Mad Reloader retrain has lots of potential to be another searcher for the Yubel archetype. They just need easier conditions to trigger its effects, because using the battle phase is very outdated in this current meta. So maybe something like discard this card and 1 other dark monster from your hand, add 1 card that mentions Yubel, then draw a card. Something like that. Then maybe also give it a grave effect, because this is modern Yu-Gi-Oh, so why not? For example, you can banish this card, then special summon 1 Yubel monster from your hand. I think that's not too broken personally. And by doing this does make it an alternate starter so that Yubel can actually play through interruption and not just get Lotus negated and then have to pass its turn. Grave Squirmer can be given a similar discard effect and banish effect to kind of stay on theme here. A discard effect could be if you control a Yubel monster, you can discard this card from your hand to destroy 1 card on the field or in your hand, making it another way to destroy your own cards, as well as the option of popping 1 card your opponent controls, which is good if you need spell or trap removal, because the Yubel does rely on the battle phase to OTK your opponent. Then the banish effect could be something like if a face-up continuous spell or trap card that mentions Yubel would be destroyed by your opponent's card effect, you can banish this card instead. I think having protection for your spells and traps is very useful for the deck, and is kind of what it needs for the Yubel deck to be good during the grind game, because so far from playtesting, I have noticed that it heavily relies on keeping the spells and traps on the field if a lot of your stuff gets interrupted turn 1. So I do want to quickly mention this. Yubel also used Phantom Sky Blaster, but considering how this card is currently limited, I don't really think this is going to get a retrain personally. But if you have any ideas, let me know in the comments below. Moving on, there were 4 traps that Yubel used in the anime, and all 4 of them haven't seen TCG prints as of yet. The 4 cards are Last Trick, Zero Sprite, Zero Hole, and Fiend Rose. Let's go over these anime effects real quick. So Last Trick says if your opponent activates a spell card that would be sent to the graveyard this turn, add that card to your hand instead of send it to the graveyard. I think they could just release this card, even though it doesn't really benefit Yubel in any way. It's just a cool anime card, and I don't think it's too broken since it's just a trap. And most spell cards are archetype based, so I don't think this would see much use in competitive play anyway, so I think they could just release it just for the sake of completion for anime cards. Zero Sprite is a continuous trap that says equip this card to a face-up monster you control. Its original attack becomes 0, that monster can attack twice during each battle phase. This is a generic card that does actually synergize with Yubel, because even if Yubel's attack is 0, it can still do damage, especially now with the new Nightmare Pain continuous spell card. I'm not sure if this would actually see play in the Yubel deck, because the spell and trap card zone is getting very crowded with a lot of continuous trap cards, and a card like this isn't necessary to actually OTK. You can easily OTK without this card, but it's just cool to have. So Zero Hole we haven't seen released yet in the TCG. This says activate only when an opponent's effect monster's effect activates when it is summoned, negate the effect and destroy that monster. So it's kind of like pulling the rug, but it's a whole trap card, which means it can be searched by Trap Tricks. So hey, Trap Tricks players rejoice, I guess. Might as well release it. I don't think it would change the game that much. It's basically a different version of Trap Trick Trap Hole Nightmare for the Trap Tricks deck, except it does any summon effect. So it actually covers something that Trap Trick haven't been able to do before, while also giving a niche effect that people would have to think about whether they want to run this in their deck. And finally, we have Fiend Rose. The effect reads, after activation, this card becomes an equipped card and is equipped to a monster you control. The equipped monster cannot be destroyed by battle, and you take no battle damage from battles involving the equipped monster. If this card is removed from the field, destroy the equipped monster. Fiend Rose is kinda outdated, but they could release this card and rework the effect to be a Yubel archetype card, making it the 4th spell or trap that could be searched by the effect of Spirit of Yubel. I'm not sure what they could make the effect be. Maybe it changes into an equipped card that prevents a Yubel monster from being affected by opponent's effects, except by destruction effects or something like that. I think that's not too broken. And maybe also keep the line that says, if this card is removed from the field, destroy the equipped monster, because that's kind of what you wanted to do with the new Yubel archetype, destroy your own Yubel cards to evolve to next forms pretty rapidly. So yeah, I don't really know. If you guys have any better ideas of how they can make this card, then send me your custom card effects in the comments below. Let's be creative and have some fun with ideas, and let's try not to break the game by doing so. We can't have too much power, as much as we want to as Yubel players. So yeah, those are my speculations and custom card effect ideas. Oh yeah, I almost forgot. The Sacred Beast structure deck was released in 2020, which was low-key a Yubel deck pretty much. Since Yubel was the one that actually used this deck in the anime, there's definitely potential that the new Phantom Nightmare set could see a couple of support cards for the Sacred Beasts. Of course, these might actually work in a Yubel deck since they rely on Fiend monsters with 0 attack and defense. After all, I'm currently running 3 copies of 2 Sacred Beast cards in my deck profile right now. By the way, if you haven't seen that yet, that was actually my previous upload. I'll just pop a link down below so you can check that out if you haven't already. So yeah, that's what I think they could do with more waves of support for Yubel in the future. I think that the only things we will actually see in Phantom Nightmare that I've mentioned today will probably be more of the generic support, such as the Dark Counterpart cards. But for the more direct Yubel support, with potential retrains of Regenerating Rose, Fiend Rose, Mad Reloader, and Grave Skirmer, I don't think we'll see those cards until the next set, or maybe even a different pack, because new archetypes and support usually comes in waves of 7 per set, and we've already got 7 cards for this new Yubel archetype pretty much. But either way, I'm very excited to see the future of Yubel, and I hope you guys are too. So thanks for watching everyone, and I can't wait to see your ideas in the comments below. See you in the next video.